what I wanted. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the second go around of the 2021 rule changes. As I said the last time, this is a little bit of a letdown. Usually we would be first on the street in early January and getting the word out, but with our security system broken the way it was, people knew in December. So a lot of the social media and what have you, all the websites have been carrying a number of things. So this is really just going to be for, the ideas for referees to look at the in-depth rule. As I have said many times, that it's really difficult teaching rules because there is just no way to shortcut it. You really need to look at the rule book word by word and go through it. And when you do that the first time around, you're only going to remember 60% if you're lucky, and it's kind of boring. And then what you have to do is when things happen on the court or people ask you questions, you actually go look at that rule and read it and put it into a context of a on-court situation. And that's when it really starts to take some meaning and, different words within the rules will pop out at you and give you an idea of where that rule is trying to go. And so we'll cover some of that here tonight without any doubt. Okay. In the preamble for the new rules, when they put it out, they have quite a bit of a background on what they were doing. And I think it's important just to talk about a couple of those things. And that is, the Rules Committee, they got a very tough job to do. They can't please all the people, as you can imagine, and they're trying to get the best they can for the game. So their priority is to preserve the integrity of the game. Then they look at what's best for the players and their experience on the court, with a consideration, making it easier to learn and to play. And then down the road is what's best for the officiating group and the team. And that's how they sort of look at it and prioritize it. One of the big concepts that they're certainly trying to push and make sure everybody is aware of, that pickleball requires courtesy and cooperation out there on the court. And especially when there's no referee and officials there, that it's just social play. And so they are, again, really pushing it. The pros brought this in quite a bit. They're not too worried about a line call when that ball is out by a quarter of an inch. They just play it. So giving opponents the benefit of the doubt on line calls, you've probably read that before. It's key, and it's an important, essential part of what they want to push forward. All points have equal importance throughout the game. Doesn't matter if it's 1-0 or 9-10. They're all equally important. It's important to understand that both partners on the court can make calls. And, before I guess, we tried to frown upon the person who's on the far side of the court calling a ball on the opposite side. But you'll see some of the new rule line calling, not rules, but the principles, if you like, have changed, and they're changing their ideas, and they want everybody to be comfortable making a call. Prompt calls are important. That eliminates the two chance option where you have a swing at it and then you call hinder or ball on court or call it a let in the old days when it hit the net, but not anymore. No referee, player cooperation. Replays are an option. Rally stands as played. And if you get into a real tense situation, this is more for a tournament without a referee, then you could ask the head ref or the tournament director to assign you a referee because we're not getting anywhere on the court. Right, so the first major rule change that I have to look at is an easy one. And it's certainly what they've been doing is changing the points in time when different calls are made on the court by the referee and when things happen. So this is one of them. And it reads, the entire score must be called before the ball is served. All right, so the entire score must be called before the ball is served. So if I'm going 2-4-2, and just as I'm getting that last 2 out, somebody hits that ball before I get it out, then that's a fault. If I go 2-4-2 and they go bang, that's fine. And that's what can happen now. So you're in the middle of calling the score at 2-4. And if you pause, they've obviously got their arm probably in motion, and they might even make contact with the ball. You have to consider, did you cause that because of your delay and break your cadence of what you normally do? So if you go 2-4-2, and then the one time you go 2-4-2, and you pause that bit, and that person hits the ball, I wouldn't call a fault on them. I'd call referee error. I'll reserve the ball. All right, so as long as that's clear. To remove the ambiguity between service motion and practice swings, that was the reason that they brought this one in. Previously, people were allowed to take practice swings, but they were not allowed to swing past the ball, if you will. So if you're holding the ball in one hand here, you're able to swing up to the ball, but not past it. Otherwise, it was a fault last year. Now this has completely removed that, and you can do anything you want after the call of the score pretty much. Okay, we'll go on. So this is the first, I won't say controversial, but I'll say one of the highlights of the rule changes for this year, which has had a lot of social media attention and a lot of conversation. That is, the server must serve to the correct service court, the court diagonally opposite the server. The serve may clear or touch the net and must clear the non-volley zone, or the no volley zone, and the no volley zone lines. The serve may land on any other court line. So the first thing you heard me do is correct myself. So used to saying the NVZ is the non-volley zone. They have changed the nomenclature for that just slightly, and they're now calling it the no volley zone. Same thing, non-volley zone, no volley zone. But the big issue again is that the serve ball can now touch the net and is playable as long as it enters the court legally on the diagonal side, on the opponent's diagonal side. So as long as it clears the no volley zone line, the sideline to the non-volley zone, and the center line. As long as it clears those lines and then hits any of the other lines, the baseline or the center line past the non-volley or the sideline past the non-volley, that's a legal serve and has to be played. There is no lets on that. So if we look at the rationale, I think is really important in this one. It affirms that the let serve replays are no longer valid. Absolutely. Even if the serve touches the net, as long as the serve lands in the appropriate receiving court, the ball is live and no replays will be called. Part of the goal to reduce player and referee conflicts involved when a player calls a let and the referee does not agree. It also prevents receivers from calling phantom lets on ace serves. So I've certainly seen that one where somebody gets an ace serve right past the person, then the person that's standing at the net goes, let. It provides better clarity that the server must clear the non. Yes, we talked about that. So let me just see if I got the next slide. Yeah, no, we don't. So part of the decision making on this one is that the rationale is, why should the server be penalized for hitting the net on the serve when in fact the return of serve can come back and hit the net much harder and just fall over the net into the non-volley zone line, and there's no penalty against the return of server. So the advantage goes more heavily in favor of the return of server. So this way we have some equalization. And I think that's true. And we're gonna have to see how it plays out. So what we did yesterday, how many we got, Walter, online there? I'm only seeing 4. Walter? All right, if anybody has any questions or any comments, do you want to open your mics and just have a, comment?
We got about 13 now.
Okay, good, thanks.
I need to correct you.
Go.
In the classic rule book, we are still a non-volley zone. It's the alternate book that says no volley.
Is it? Okay, well, I knew I read it, and so I didn't realize that's where I picked it up from. It's just the alternate rule book, is it?
Yep.
Okay, good. So like Walter says, we're going to pretty much ignore the alternate rule book in Canada and just go with the IFP USAPA rule book. So that's good. I don't have to relearn something new. So any comment on let serves? Nope. All right, you're happy to go on. Now, one of the, certainly the other big change for 2021 is the bounce serve that is being brought in as a provisional rule. And the idea of the provisional rule is to see what happens with the 1 year and get comments and to see how it, just how it plays out. So in addition to the standard serve, sequence described in Rule 4A1 to 4A7 players may opt to use an alternate drop serve method. The rationale is to provide a better service method for the physically impaired, easier to enforce for players and referees. Referees only need to verify the ball is dropped correctly. I would like to see that rephrased, and the word I would use is not dropped, but released. All right, so all you're doing is releasing it. Provides an alternate service method for anybody who's got a server block. The yips got their hands, they're shaking and they can't get it in the diagonal at all. So it gives an option to be able to better hit the ball. Servers may use the non-serve or provisional drop serve at any time during the match without notifying the referee or the other team which one you're going to do. So they can go back and forth and do it in one serve. You can do a drop serve, and if you don't like the bounce, you can re-drop it. If you don't like that, you can throw it up in the air and hit the ball before it bounces at all. And that's a standard serve. So the referee at that point then has to pay attention to the relationship of the paddle to the ball with the three things that are important in the standard serve. And they are, the ball has to be made contact with the paddle below the waist, which previously was the navel, but it's sort of in that general area. And the top of the paddle cannot be above the break of the wrist, right? The break of the wrist, paddle can't be above it. It's got to be below, parallel to or below. And of course, the paddle must be having upward motion with arc. Okay, with arc is important. So here's some of the rules surrounding that drop serve. There's some of the requirements that has to happen. The server must release the ball from one of the server's hands or dropped off the server's paddle from any natural unaided height. And that's bolded for a reason. That's the important part. So you can stand on your tippy toes and then you can reach as high as you want above your head and just release that ball and come back and swing and hit that ball any way you want. Again, no relationship to paddle to ball. And I've already told you can hit it as many times or have as many attempts as you want. After you have released the ball, or after the referee has called the score, they will be starting their 10-second count. And you have 10 seconds still to get that ball into play. And the difference there is that previously when the referee started his 10-second count, we would be watching and we'd get to 9. And if somebody's arm moved to make the service motion, that was fine. You wouldn't call a fault because they had started their service motion prior to the 10th number being called. And the same is true here, that they have, but not same is true. The new relationship is that paddle must hit the ball before we get to 10. A player shall be called before the return of serve if the release of the ball is not visible. A replay, sorry, should be called if the release is not visible. So you have to make that release visible to all to the opponent that's on the other side, the receiver and the referee. Okay, the only downward acceleration parted on the ball is that which is from gravity. Before the bouncing of, on the ground, the ball shall not be propelled, thrown, tossed, or hit upward with the paddle. Failure to drop the ball properly will result in immediate fault. And there is no restriction on where the ball can land on the playing surface. So it can land on the playing surface or it can land in the court. What is important, however, is that 4.8.2 must be met, and that is the parameters on where your feet must be. So 1 foot must be behind the baseline, and the other foot, neither foot, or the other foot can't be outside the boundary or touching the boundary or outside the boundary of the center line or the sideline.
Al, can you go back one slide?
I will in a minute. Let me just finish this.
Okay.
If the drop serve is used, the ball may be struck with either a forehand or backhand motion without any other restrictions. So again, forehand or backhand doesn't matter. And then I've said several times, doesn't matter the relationship to the ball to paddle. Which one were you after, Jim?
This one.
Okay.
Okay, just the third indentation. So that's what it says, any limit on the number of bounces prior to hitting the ball. I can reach up, drop the ball, let it bounce once, let it bounce again, and then hit it.
Sorry, Jim, say that. Yeah, that was mine putting that in there. You won't find that actually in the rule change. I put that in. I should change the color on that because I wanted to make sure I got that clear with the rules committee. I had asked them and they hadn't got back to me. And now they have said there's no limit on the number of times that you can drop and release the ball. And there's no limit on the number of times that ball bounces prior to you hitting it after your initial release.
Okay, okay.
Okay, follow me? I mean, it's kind of I just wanted to affirm, I don't see any advantage. I don't see somebody really trying to hit it on the second bounce because the ball is going to be pretty low at that point, right? That's
just the same thing as returning a ball underneath when you reach underneath the net. That happens.
Yeah, it's about the same. It's right. It's ridiculous. All right, let's open the mics up then and have a conversation on this one. If you've got any questions, any clarifications you would like.
One other question. The part that I see that's going to be very difficult on this one is when the server is free dropping the ball, that he doesn't put a sideways spin on that ball.
That's right. That was one of the first.
In other words, when the ball drops down, the hole should basically not be spinning to your eye.
That's true. That's quite correct. That was one of the first questions I was asked, can I spin the ball and dropping it? And I said right away, no, there's no way because you have to rotate and you're applying a force on that ball and that is not allowed. All you can do is simply release.
Yeah, but you can release it off your paddle, which automatically rolls it off the paddle.
Okay, so let's just talk about that one because I was going to go there, Robin. What they have said, there's two paddle serves. One is a COVID serve. And what you're relaying to is on the bounce serve, you're quite right. You can take the paddle, lift it up, and just roll it off the paddle. So good counter to what Jim was saying, Robin. You've given the point that ball will be rotating slightly. And so the hose will not be stationary as it's dropping down. But there's still no force applied to it. It's just rolled off the paddle and has no force. So, you know, what we're looking for is that person takes the hand or the paddle and moves it up and then moves it out of the way. That's got force applied and would be an illegal call or an illegal serve and therefore a fault. So the other one that you had brought to mind is what they're calling the sling serve. And the other people are calling it the COVID serve. And that's why it's been brought in for this year. And that is if you're not wanting to touch the ball, a player has every right this year to scoop the ball up with their paddle, to take their paddle, lift it up, throw the ball up in the air and hit it before it bounces. And that is still a legal serve. If they take that ball and do a sling serve and let it bounce and hit it, that would be a fault because they've applied more than gravity to that ball. They've propelled it, and that would be a fault. So that's what we have to look for as referees. Is that paddle stationary or is it moving at the time? And if they do move it, that's fine. We can't call a fault until that ball is hit. And if it bounces and they hit it, it's a fault. If they hit it before it bounces, it's not a fault.
Jesus.
Yeah, I agree.
So with this COVID serve that you're describing, is that subject to the old rules?
Yes, as soon as you're not bouncing the ball, then all the other rules still apply.
Right. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a piece in there that said that the receiver has to be able to see you release the ball. If they don't see you release the ball, what do? They
would catch the ball and say, "I did not see the release. Reserve, please."
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if they hit it, they have deemed to have seen the release, and that ball's in play.
Right.
That's a segue into the next can of worms, Al.
That's true. And you've seen that can of worms coming, have you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. That's my biggest concern this year.
The drop serve, they makes a killer ace serve, and then the receiver looks at that and doesn't even attempt to return it and goes, "No, I didn't see that clearly."
Exactly. So you've taken the let serve away, and what have you done? You've given them this recourse on the drop serve. Exactly.
Now, as a referee, could you override that call?
Oh, absolutely. It's your call. Your call to make.
I thought this was supposed to make our job easier, Al.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Yep. Yeah, so, I mean, that's good. Those are very good, valid points to be concerned about, because that makes you aware before you step on the court that this is what one of the things I'm going to have to watch for and expect from the players. And I think that's a key aspect of refereeing, is to anticipate the issues you're going to have before they take place on the court. And therefore, you've already worked out how you're going to handle that.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if the server releases the ball, drops the ball, changes their mind and catches it, and then does a regular serve, is that okay?
Okay. Now, the other thing they can do is they can go up there and put their hand up as high as they want, release the ball, and then hit it before it bounces. Okay, so what we're doing is we're disguising what kind of serve we're going to do, and it might catch somebody off. If you've just done 8 serves in a row where you've released the ball and let it bounce and hit it, and now all of a sudden you raise your hand up, release it, and hit it before it goes, that's still legal.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry?
There was a comment made that the referee can override the receiver if the receiver says he didn't see the drop of the ball. Your statement says that the ball must be visible to the referee and the receiver. So you, as a referee, if the receiver says he didn't see it, you have to accept that and call a replay.
I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, if you're standing there and you're watching the release, and that the receiver's you've got a good view of the receiver and their ability to watch, I don't think I would agree with it if there's not a circumstance where it's hidden. I can't understand. Somebody was saying yesterday on our call that, you know, they do a 360 and they hide the ball somehow. I really am at a loss as to how you're going to hide and disguise that ball from the receiver. But I'm going to have to see that one. I can't figure that out, how you're going to hide it.
Al, how common do you think this serve is going to be?
I think if you've gone on to YouTube and looked at some of the people who are practicing their serves, they're out there getting some very wicked serves in there.
Within 24 hours of this change notice coming out, there was exploitation videos released on YouTube.
Yeah. Mark Renison, I just saw a quick thing on him taking Tyson McGuffin's picture on the court, and Tyson had a big bucket of balls, And let me tell you, Tyson is one of the best servers in the standard method, and he's going to have still a heck of a serve here. He was getting them in with wild cuts on him.
Mark Renison and I have been chatting a little bit. So.
Oh, have you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so to answer your Barry, your question, I think you're going to see it, and I think it will be a potent weapon.
Okay.
Yep. All right, any other comments, concerns, questions? I think, again, for our purposes, what we need to make sure we understand is how we're going to referee that one, what are the important points to be watching, and what distinguishes a fault and what is not a fault, and when are you going to call it. That's what's key for us. All right, let's move along. One of the other quite major and significant changes, of course, is that the receiver and the server and their partners, now anybody can now ask almost any question in relationship to, am I the correct server? Am I in the correct position? What is our score? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all those old questions which were thrown out and illegal are now back in there, and they can ask them. And Robin, I was wondering if this is what you were talking about, because here's another catch that you can ask these questions if you don't have a timeout or anything. You can stop play right up until the point the ball is hit. And that's one that I have great concern with, that this is going to break the continuity and the flow of the match. So as, again, referees, that's one of your prime mandates, is to make sure the flow of the match keeps going. And here now is an option for them to be able to slow it up. But again, you as a referee have the final say, and you can always speak to them and tell them that you're not going to expect any more interruptions. Otherwise, it's going to be a technical. But anyway, let's go to the point of the rules at hand here. So this change is part of a multiple rule change, moving all timing issues consistent to the one point in time, which is before the next serve occurs in this case. Okay, so they can challenge calls right up until the next serve occurs on the court. It also reinstates the allowance for players to ask for their correct position. Yes, we talked about that. And conjunction with possible conflicts. Yes, goal is to reduce player. Yeah, the goal is to reduce player and referee conflicts, but we'll see what happens there. The change is consistent with the guidelines that anytime any player asks a scorer, correct player, or correct position question, the referee will pause play. That is, call time, raise their hands above their head, step into the court, thereby creating a dead ball situation. Answer the player's question. Lower your hands, step back out of the court, recall the score. No 15-second notification is necessary. Just, I'll recall the score. Score is 4-5-2. And then for Rule 8E, no faults can be committed during a dead ball. So that's an important aspect, right? That is really coming into play now, is that you can't call any faults during, well, not quite true. Normally speaking, you can't call any faults during a dead ball. What faults can you? This is a bit of a test I'll throw at you. What fault could you call when the ball is dead?
Unruly behavior.
That's a disciplinary thing. So what fault on play is going to be called?
Nothing.
No, there is one.
Illegal paddle use.
Illegal what?
If you had an illegal paddle.
Oh, no, yeah, but I'm talking about, we're in the middle of a play, in the middle of a rally, and you're going to call a fault because of a situation which happened on the court. We're not calling disciplinary. Yes, you can call disciplinary actions at any time, and those sort of things, that still goes. But we're talking about a fault situation. So the ball is dead, but we can still call a fault. I'll give it to you. You can still have to call non-volley zone violations. So where that person is moving towards the non-volley zone and they're teetering and the ball goes dead, as it has, that was in the old rules even, you still call the non-volley zone violation as soon as they fall into the court. So that's the only exception to that rule. Before the serve occurs, the receiving team may ask, this is just the receiving team, and they can ask the same questions, and it's the same scenario. So here's the scenario we should go over. The referee calls the correct score. Before the serve occurs, the referee's partner starts to ask if the receiver is the correct receiver. During the time when the receiver's partner is asking the question, the serve occurs. Since the referee's attention is on the server, the referee immediately calls time in order to properly answer the receiver's partner's question. The referee confirms that the receiver is correct and states that they will recall the score. The serving team claims that the receiver's partner committed a fault by asking a question when the serve occurred. The referee states that the start of the question being asked occurred before the serve occurred, which is allowed by the rule. This is the same timeout being called before the serve occurs. So what I'm having to say to you and what you need to do is picture yourself out there. And what do? Every time before you call the score? You mark the score sheet, you check the score, you put it in your mind. So the score is 2-3-2. So we know we're going to call 2-3-2. We're looking up. We check the receiver. They've got 3. So there's no band over there. Well, depending on if it's 2-3-2, depends what court we're serving to. And we know that the server is receiving with 2. Or sorry, the first server is serving with 2. So we know that. Now what we do is we switch our attention away from the receiver to the server. And now we stay with the receiver, watching them release the ball, throw the ball, the relationship to the paddle. If before the ball or the paddle makes contact with the ball, somebody says something, before you've called the complete score, is the other key. Before you call the complete score, then it is time, and you step in. If they don't ask the question until you've completed the whole score, and then they say something, you are to call fault. That is a fault. They've stopped the play. After the serve occurs, if they ask a question, you ignore. Is that clear as mud?
I can see someone who's hearing impaired like me. I'm gonna have to really be paying attention.
Yep, and that was one of the points that somebody made, is that as you're speaking, you're watching that ball and paddle, and if you finish 2-4-2 and then you hear bang on the paddle, then that's fine. But if you go 2-4, bang on the paddle, and then you go 2, you know to call a fault. So if you do have a hearing problem and you're not hearing that contact, you've got to be very aware with your eyes and to pick that up.
I was thinking more of you're concentrating on the server, trying to figure out what serve they're going to use, and then they're lining up to hit the ball. And meanwhile, one of the receivers asks a question.
That's right.
On that last one, if you've called the score completely, they can't ask you a question. Can they?
No, that's what I've said. In between, after you've called the score completely, prior to them hitting the ball, it would be a fault.
Right. My other question is, if there was a situation where you called a timeout and moved in and gave the right answer or the wrong answer, moved back and called 4-3-2, does your 10 seconds start over, or does it carry on from where it was interrupted?
Good question, Jim. I've had to look that one up because I was asked that question. And my answer immediately was that it is a recount. But again, I had to go back in the rules to confirm that the rules for this year do in fact support that. And I have found that they do.
Okay, thank you.
Right? Yeah, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's in the referee handbook.
Well, the referee handbook is one thing, but is it in the rules?
I don't think there's any direct answer to that one way or the other. So we would still, we would still go with the old method, which is that every time you stop, you legally stop that call of the serve or the count, and you're stopped, you would restart it, because you have, as soon as you recall the score, you start your recount. That's why when we were training referees before, you recall, we've always said, do not get tricked into having to recall the score. Because if you call the score, the 10-second count starts and they're looking at you. Ref, did you call the score? And I've seen referees go, yes, 4, 3, 2. And so that 4 seconds, which had already transpired, is now wiped off. And as soon as you recall it a second time, it restarts. So I say, watch for that. Don't call it. All I do is I've called the score, serve please. And I do a little hand motion and they get the idea and they know that I'm counting. One of the other points that I made yesterday is previously, I always let everybody know when they were getting close to the 10 seconds by doing a little bit of a chop so that they would see it. So I would be watching, and then they're not serving. So then I would start going 6, 7, 8, 9, fault. But now that would be termed coaching and is no longer legal. So as a referee, you do have to be very aware of your motions, and you can't be doing anything that can be deemed to be coaching and helping any of the teams on the court.
If you do an audible count, is that
No, you're doing a silent count to yourself and trying to make it as consistent as you can each and every time.
Okay, I'm still a little bit confused on this second point here.
Which one's that? Go ahead.
The referee states the start of the question being asked occurred before the serve. But you're saying, like, if you've already done your you've announced the score. So in between the score and the time of the serve, and they question?
They want to question it after you've called the score. It's a fault.
It's a fault.
Yes.
Okay, but this says, which is allowed by rule.
Pardon? Sorry, I'm missing what you're saying.
Well, it's just that the second point, so the referee stated that the start of the question being asked occurred, but before the serve occurred, which is allowed by rule.
The referee states that the start of the question being asked occurred before the start of the serve.
Which is allowed by rule. So I'm a little bit confused as if it's allowed by the rule, but we're saying it's a fault if they've already announced the score prior to the serve.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to ask you about that too, because now that's new this year, that it's at the point of time that the serve occurs. Up until then, they can ask a question.
You're right. Yeah, that's right. I do have to check one other place when we're going through here, but you're right. Yeah, I'm steering you wrong in that one. So they have up until the point of time when this ball is hit to stop play, and as long as it's not hit, then it's still playable.
That point, you would step on the court and call time and answer their question.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 10-second count, call a score and 10-second account is for the server only.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so as soon as you call time, right, you know, the server could have been taking a while, waiting, and you're already at 8, and then another player asks the question, then you call time and stop the play.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, I could see that where the server is ready to serve right after the score has been announced. And it'd sure be a fine line if one of the receivers or the receiving team asked the question as they were in motion.
Yeah. But I mean,
talk about the click of a ball.
That's no different. You know, I used to do it myself when I was playing. I would wait right up until the referee started to call the score before I asked for my timeout. Yeah. You know, so we did the same played the same antics. All right, good.
Thank you.
What does it say? When an incorrect player serves here, yeah, we've been there. No, we didn't. We haven't done this one. All right, so this one is the existing rule. And let me just read now. Well, I don't really need to read it. It talks about, you know, being able to ask the questions. The new rule is when an incorrect player serves or receives, or a player serves from an incorrect position, the referee will immediately stop play and identify the faults. And I think, you know, what this is all about is the plural here, that your responsibility, if they're in the wrong position and they are the wrong server, you are to relay back to them. Fault, wrong server, wrong position. Fault, wrong server, illegal serve. Okay, so you want to give them both infractions that occurred as they occurred, right? So that's something, again, that adds a little bit more to your plate. Point in time.
Al Barry here. I think I read somewhere that if the server was in the wrong, if it was a wrong server and the receiver was in the wrong position, or the wrong receiver as well, you would not advise the receiver that they were in the wrong position because the server was the fault that occurred first.
That's correct. Yeah,
okay.
That's correct. And that's exactly at the fault that happened. The ball is dead by the time that they're in the wrong position, and they wouldn't have returned the ball, right? So you never call a receiver fault until they make contact with the ball to return it.
So in that last point where it talked about faults in the plural, that would be the faults on that one team.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
On the server.
Yeah.
Right. So point in time, this is there's a lot of rule changes this year in 2021, which all surround points in time and when things happen and when you make the call and when you don't. So let's make sure we understand all of those. Incorrect player or position. When an incorrect server or player's position is discovered after a rally, game, or after a match has ended, the offending team can be faulted until the next serve occurs or prior to the score sheet being returned to the tournament operations desk. So what we're saying there is, normally speaking, in a game situation, in between points in a rally, they have until the next serve occurs to point out that there is a fault, they're a wrong server, wrong position, or whatever it might be. As soon as that serve takes place now, you can't take away the point that was previously gained. But if it's now discovered at that point, you correct the position change and make everything right. If that situation were to happen on a match point, so let's actually go back a minute, and let's say in a game number 2 out of best of 3, and it's 1-1, so we're going to go into a third game, and it was discovered on the last point of the second game. They have until the next serve, starting the third game within that match, to bring it to the referee's attention to have it changed. Now, the referee can only change it if he can concur and agree that an error was made. If you're looking at your score sheet and it doesn't make sense and you didn't catch it, then you're not going to be able to overturn that. But if you are, and you can go back and read your score sheet and see what had happened and agree to it, then they have up until that point. So now the one here that goes even further and gives them a lot of time is that the third game in the match is being played, and they discover that they have them sign off on the score sheet, the winning team, and everybody goes about their way, and you're about to hand it in, or you're walking back to the officiating desk, and they come to you and say, hey, I've got a problem in that last point. They had the wrong server, or they were in the wrong position with that score. And you look at your score sheet, and you work it out, and you say, yeah, they were. Then you are to recall the game, get them back on the court, and finish that match up until you actually physically turn that score sheet over at the officiating desk to the other individual. So as soon as you release it, I would say, out of your control, and it's laying on that desk, then it's out of your control. So they have all that time, which can be a little bit annoying if you're at Nationals and you've come from court 43, you've walked all the way back up there, and that could be a good 5-minute delay, and then you get turned around. I don't think that's going to happen too much, but it foreseeably could.
So what you're saying is the players can sign off on the score But while they're walking back for you to hand it in, they could go, oh, that was wrong.
Yes.
Even though they've signed off on it.
Well, they're not signing off on it. The losing team is not signing off on it. Only the winners sign off on it.
Okay.
Right? So the winners aren't going to be the one that come running to you. Well, they could do to their own detriment and say, hey, we just realized we won that game illegally. Yeah, that's quite possible. But yeah, you picked up on what I was thinking. The better time of cutting that off would have been upon signature of the winners. Then that no longer, that window of opportunity is no longer available.
Yeah.
They chose when you turn it over to the operations desk. All right. So a little odd, but pretty simple to follow. Another point in time, the wrong score is called. If the server or the referee calls the wrong score, any player may stop play before the third shot occurs to ask for a correction. So this is a new point in time. We haven't had this one before. So what we're saying, the rationale here is this rule expands the window of time that players are allowed to challenge a possible incorrectly called score and extends it to the third shot point in time. Since the server is allowed to start their service motion during the calling of the score and potentially serve the ball the split second the score has been called, this gives all players an extended amount of time to proceed and decide if they want to challenge the called score. So the scenario is the score is 2-3-2, and I happen to call 2-3-1, and the ball is served. It is returned by the receiving team to the serving team. And now, whether it's the serving team or all of a sudden the receiving team realizes that they hit the ball, but now I want to question that, they can, before that paddle makes contact for the third shot, they can question it without penalty as long as the score has been incorrectly called by the referee. And then that would be a let and a replay would ensue. If, however, it is discovered that the referee did not make an error, then of course it's a fault because they stopped it. This one this one bewilders me a bit because I don't understand why players want to stop a rally because a score may or may not have been called. For heaven's sakes, play it out and deal with it after the rally is complete. That's the easiest thing to do. But I know some people, their mind has gone to it and they now are not paying attention, mishit the ball, so they want to stop and to get it answered correctly. Any questions on that one?
What are you expecting? How are you expecting the players to interrupt play to question the score? Like, what is they just, how are they going to stop play?
Well, actually, I think probably if we just look a little bit further here, there might be something that answers that. This rule change specifically does not follow the goal of moving all timings or appeals issues to the serve of the ball. That's important. And the reason for this is that if a referee calls an incorrect score and then a 50-dink rally ensues, the option to have a replay and have a player play the wrong score called card to ensure a replay should not be an option. This is
I'm not questioning the timing. It's just, before the third shot happens, are they just going to say, hey, ref, or wrong score, or
I'm still going to get you to hold on because I think maybe not.
I would have the same question. What would you, as a referee, what would you recognize as a player stopping play before a third shot is made?
Well, normally what's going to happen is probably the return of server who has not hit the ball is going to catch it and say, ref, is that the right score? And they're going to stop play immediately. But that again is fraught with problems because if they haven't returned it and they're wrong, it was a correctly called score, then it's a fault. But normally that's what's going to happen. And I think there is a spot in here where it goes into a scenario where it rationalizes this and talks about it. And I thought it was on this one, but it's not, but it will be another one that same sort of concept. And so we can hold off and discuss that. Because that's what usually the escalation is, that they usually stop and catch it or hit it out or whatever, and then go, ref, that's not right. But they have to do that before the third shot is made, and the referee has to have made an error, or it is a fault against them for stopping play.
And what if the serve's an ace and then they call, oh, wrong score?
Well, and what's the answer to that, guys? What's the answer?
Before the third shot takes place, it's
no. He said the server serves an ace.
Yeah.
And you've called the wrong score. What happens?
If they call wrong score, then you get to reserve.
That's right. So if you realize it and you're the referee and you realize you've called the wrong score, you throw your hands up, go, time, referee error. I called the wrong score. My apologies. And that server is going to look at you with daggers, and but he has to reserve.
Yeah, but in a game where there's no referee and the server calls the score the wrong score, serves an ace.
Well, you're into another world, which, well, you're right, because I mean, what we're doing is training referees.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can tell you, it's always very, very, there's no easy way to deal with that when you're talking social play. Is what they're trying to say is, hey, how important is it? If it's social play and rec play, you're not keeping track of anything. It really doesn't matter. Be generous, be nice, be courteous, and say, yeah, no problem.
That's where the alternate scoreboard rules book come into play. It probably says anybody can call it if they so choose.
Yeah, the alternate rule book, you know, is not just for not having referees. I mean, it's to simplify it for all players is what they're trying to do. I think it's like having two watches. Which one is telling you the real thing? And we all know that the higher level authority here is the standard rule book. All right, that answer that? You're all right with that one?
Yeah.
Okay. 4K2, another point in time. After the serve has occurred, a player who stops play and challenges the called score when there is no error will have committed a fault, right? Pretty simple. The serve occurs, player stops play, the referee did not make an error, therefore it's a fault. This change aligns with the global goal of moving all timing issues, again, to the serve contact of the ball. Since players are permitted to ask or challenge, confirm any score-related concerns before the serve occurs. And once the serve occurs, any player that stops play to challenge the called score will have committed a fault, providing the score has been called correctly. Scenario B below illustrates how a referee should avoid the pitfall of getting into a conversation with a player after the serve has occurred. So this is important because I can see this happening. The referee calls the score 5-5-2, and the server serves the ball. As the ball is crossing the net, heading towards the receiver's partner looks at the referee, who's standing close by right there, and asks, we have 6, don't we? The referee is to ignore the question, and the receiver returns the ball, and the rally ensues. So again, as soon as that contact, paddle to ball, you're not going to stop play. Unless there's a fault or another situation, but not in regards to any questions or comments from any of the players. So that's when you draw your line. Prior to the ball being hit, you're going to throw the hands up. You're going to call time. After the ball is struck, the ball is in play, and we don't stop play. You all right there, Barb? I see you looking.
No, because what about the third shot there?
Well, the difference here is that there was no mistake made by the referee. So,
okay.
Right?
So okay, yeah.
This one's a correctly called score. Everything's going along as it should. And the partner now is confused. He thinks there's something up. And we got 6, don't we? And, you know, so just you're to have blinders on. you're not going to get embroiled into that conversation, because as soon as you start conversing with them, you've now interfered with play and you're going to have to call a time. So once the ball has been served, to avoid the potential that the referee will interject themselves and stop play unnecessarily, the referee shall not answer any questions by any player or from any player.
I think the difference here is not whether the score has been called correctly or not. It's, do I answer questions versus does somebody physically stop the play? You can answer questions before the service starts. I can stop the play after the serve starts, or I can ask a question after the serve has been committed. 3 different things.
True. Yeah, you're right.
So your 4K2 is don't answer any questions afterwards. If the player wants to stop the play by catching the ball, that's a different scenario, and that's when they're liable for a fault or not.
Right. And continued, the referee effectively ignoring the question asked by any player will result in one of two things. So this is exactly what you were talking about, Robin. The rally will continue as normal. The players will escalate their concerns and eventually stop play by catching the ball, raising a hand, and halting play, or whatever other means that they might do. Or if they continue play, that's great. After the serve, once a player has stopped play and challenges the score call, either the referee has made an error in the score call and the replay will be called, or if the referee has called the correct score, the player who stopped play will have committed a fault. The guideline removes the potential for player and referee discussions that could arise after the ball has been served.
So from a player's perspective, why would I stop it in the middle of the play when I've got all the dead time afterwards before the next serve starts?
That's what I ask myself, Walter, but I see it all the time. They want to jump on it right away and they distract themselves, they stop play and they get involved in that. And that's what I say, just leave it. And that score as called does not stand if it's incorrect. They think that if I don't correct it, it's going to stand or something. I don't know. Don't know what's in their mind that they want to stop it so much. Just play it and get on with the rally. Discuss it after the fact. That's the simplest method. Right, so 4K3. A player who stops play after the third shot occurs will have committed a fault and she'll lose the rally. Yeah, that's simple. That just sort of closes the loop. Right, so change of server. In doubles, teams may change the starting server between games and should notify the referee. Keyword there is should, does not say shall. In non-officiated matches, the team should notify the opponents if there was a starting server change. Again, though, I'm not too worried about that one because we're talking about when there's a referee on the court. There is no fault or penalty for failure to make the notification. Right? There is no fault or penalty for failure to make the notification. That's key. Once a game has started, and if any points have been scored, when the referee notices a starting server has changed, the referee will stop play and annotate the score sheet accordingly and resume play. This change, in conjunction with other rule changes, is for the elimination of the possible gotcha fault that can occur before the first serve happens and is based on a very simple concept. The player that serves first at the start of the game must be the banded player. So they're wearing the band on their wrist, indicating they are the first server for that game. Right. I thought I had put in another slide there, Walter, but it's not picked it up. So we had some discussion yesterday on this one. There's a number of different scenarios, again, where things can happen. Walter, do you have...
You want me to go through them for you?
Yeah, if you just get them and I'll speak to them, you can do that.
Okay, you initially said failure to notify is not a fault. So there's two conditions. When fail to notify when we do change the bands, that's a no fault. The referee stops, makes notes, and corrects it, right?
Right.
If we don't notify and we don't change the bands, and somebody picks up that the wrong server is served because the band is not in the right place, again, that's failure to notify, and it's not a fault. The referee stops and corrects his scorecard, basically.
So, sorry, say that one again. Start at the beginning.
We did not notify, and we did not change bands.
And who's serving?
Somebody without a band.
Okay, so the first server who's still wearing the band who served in the first match now is on the left-hand side.
Yep.
That would be a fault.
You said failure to notify is not a fault.
Yeah, failure to notify is not a fault. However, in this particular case, then we have a person who is serving who does not have the band, and therefore that would be a fault. It's funny, this is a pretty simple one, but there's a lot of scenarios here that have come in, and all of a sudden it makes you think. But I think the principle is failure to notify. Okay, so down to this bullet. Can you see my mouse?
Yep.
Okay, so there is no fault or penalty for failure to make the notification. So if somebody tells you we're going to change the server, and then they don't actually go through with it, and the first server from the first match is serving, sorry, that wouldn't be the same. So this is the no fault or penalty for failure to make the change.
Okay, so failure to notify is separate from actually serving with the band in the right place.
Yeah.
So I can fail to notify, but I must serve with the band in the right location. If I don't serve with the right band, that location, that's the fault.
That's correct.
Okay.
So if they notify and say, we're going to switch server, you know, they're just being courteous, and they're telling you as a referee that they're going to switch servers, but they forget to switch the band, then it's a fault.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Even on the start of the second game.
Well, again, Jim.
At the start of the second game, you had player A serving game one to start the server and the band. The team has the right to change servers to the second game or the third game. So they make a change, and the first person up there serves without a band on it. Is that a fault? They've already made their change to the server. The referee, we haven't picked it up. We haven't marked our pages. We haven't done nothing. So who's the onus on it? It's not on the players or the team. It's on the referees. That's why it says once a game has started, and if any points have been scored when the referee noticed the starting server has changed, the referee will stop play and note the score sheet accordingly and resume play. Yeah. It doesn't say issue any penalties or anything. He will just make sure that his sheet reflects the way the players are.
Unfortunately, what you said isn't quite correct. There is onus on the players. The referee is there to pick up on those errors, but if they don't, it's still a penalty. It isn't a referee error if he misses it, is what I'm saying. The onus is still on the players to make the notifications and to make the proper change. So let's go through this one at a time, Walter, because it does get confusing, and I can't see my sheet. Darn it.
Okay, scenario A.
Right.
The team does not notify you of a change, but they do change the bands, and they serve, and the rally completes.
That's fine. No penalty.
And now you figure out that, hey, they've moved on me.
You figured out what?
That the referee figures out that the starting server changed.
That's right. So he stops play as soon as he notices that the band, he hasn't got the right person circled, but the right person with the band made the serve. And as soon as he notices a mistake on his sheet, he would stop play, and he would then change his first server and circle the new correct server that they wish to have. And he would confirm that with them. You changed servers? Yes, we forgot to tell you, ref. Good, I'll change that. You rub out your circle, put a new circle on, And that point will stand if they won that rally. If it isn't, then it's a loss of side out and it goes to the other people. But that rally would stand in that instance because that, again, was just paperwork. It was not an error.
So you just said, though, you would stop the play if you noticed.
You wouldn't stop play. You would allow the rally to finish, and then you would stop play and get it straight.
I would call a fault.
Well, I think what you would do is you would call a fault because you thought that that's the wrong server. And so you would call the fault, you would say wrong server, and then they would say, oh, but we switched servers, it's the start of a new game, and then you'd say referee error, replay that point.
I'm sorry, I'm going to go get my other computer where I got the notes. I'll be back, so talk amongst yourselves.
It's more of a paperwork thing.
I had a question for Al, but maybe one of you can answer it. Is there any place other than the wrist that that band can be worn? It has to be
worn anywhere.
Yes, you can wear it. You can tie it to your shoelace. You can put it on your ankle. As long as it's visible, you can put it wherever you like.
Right?
Yeah.
Visible to the referee and all other players.
And all other players. Okay.
I think this whole thing boils down to the fact that the person that is the first server has to have the band on. If they don't, it's a fault. Right. If they do have the band on and they haven't advised the ref, it just gets corrected later in the game.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that, Barry, would be that if I was refereeing, I've got my circle around and my clip is all set up for the guy that they told me out of the previous game was the first server. So I would more than likely call a fault and ask him what was going on.
All right, let me refocus everybody. And let me just go through, first of all, the scenarios that we're identifying, and then we'll read the actual scenarios that they've given us in the rule amendment. So Walter and I, when we finished the last one, we sort of wrote down that we have a number of different scenarios that are here. So there's no notification, is discovered prior to the serve. You just work it out with the players, there's no fault. If discovered after the serve, there's no fault. Change the score sheet accordingly. Now that's if, again, the band didn't change, there's no notification, no change, everything's neutral, that's fine. The referee is notified and the band not moved, so they had good intention to change it, but they don't move the band. There's no fault, and move the band when discovered. The referee notified and the band is moved. The first server in game one serves, incorrect server, and is at fault. All right? So the referee is notified and the band is moved to their partner, but they forget, and the first server that was up there on the game number one, who was the first server, serves, and then that would be a fault because they're not wearing the band and they just forgot, they're all in the wrong position. So that is a legal fault. So let's read the scenarios that they gave us just to make sure that the scenarios I've just gone through sort of fit and you understand the rules that you're applying. At the beginning of game number two, the serving team changes their starting server player along with the starting server band. So they change the starting server and they move the band. They do not notify the referee, however, or the opponents. Before the starting game number two, the referee notices the change in starting servers and confirms the same with the serving team, and then notifies the opponents. After confirmation, the referee makes the corrections to the score sheet and proceeds as normal. The changing team is not faulted simply because they did not give notification. So that's the concept. And I think the other point that I certainly want to make is that as the referee, this is your responsibility. And if you're doing the proper thing, check the score, look up, check the receiver's readiness, check that the proper person is in the place with the band, you're looking for the band, and then you check the server to see that they're in the proper position with the band, and everything's hunky-dory to your sheet, then we're good to go. If it's not, then you should be catching it at that point and saying, have we got an issue here? Scenario B, after game 1 has ended, Team A notifies the referee and the opponents that they are changing the starting server along with the starting server band. The referee makes the changes to the score sheet accordingly. When game 2 begins with Team A serving, Team A forgets they had changed their starting server, and the no banded player, the starting server in game number 1, serves the right hand from the right-handed court after the referee starts the game and calls the score. The referee calls an incorrect server fault on Team A. All parties were made aware of the starting server change, and the referee had adjusted accordingly on the score sheet. Although the referee should verify the starting server, it is not the referee's responsibility to ensure the starting server is the player who serves. Team A simply made a mistake and should be faulted accordingly. Now, what comes to mind here is kind of interesting. As we've been saying, you have to really be careful about your coaching. So if they have told you they're going to change the starting server, and then they line up incorrectly, as this scenario produces, do you stop and say, I thought you were changing the starting server? So then now the person with the band go, oh yeah, I forgot. And they go into place. I think that the ball is dead, and that you would do that in this particular case, because that's part of your responsibility to make sure that you have the correct starting server identified before the game begins. So there are a lot of aspects to this, isn't there? Simple little rule change, and then you're going, holy cow, how do I apply that in these many scenarios?
So Al, so you're saying that's what you would do?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I would.
Okay, good.
Now, I think it's worth maybe a question, because there is that conflict between coaching and verifying.
I can just see that. I can just see some reps not. That's all.
Yeah. Well, again, the idea here is not to go out and catch people who are just making mistakes, but then again, you shouldn't be helping one team at another team's detriment. There would have been a side out in this case. So that's why I might have to get that clarified from higher.
I think
that pretty well goes with every time a player is out of position. It's an honest mistake.
Yeah, so you're not going to correct that, are you? But this is
not every time. But at the start of a game, I can see it. Okay.
Yeah.
If you haven't gone live yet, are you sure you're in the right position?
Well, you're not saying that. Are you? You're not going to say, "Are you in the right position?" I'm going to say, "Are you in fact the starting server?" Right.
Okay. Well, again, I think that statement that you just made, "Are you the correct server?" is coaching, because you're making sure that team knows that where to go line up. It's one of those things. They line up, whether they're banders not. When you call the score, you can't be concerned if the right person has the ball to serve. It's only after the serve has occurred that you can then call it. You can't call it before.
Well, Jim, as you already heard me say in the scenario, the referee is to check and to make sure. So there's wording to that in here, which allows that and opens that door for them to check and make sure they have the right people annotated and going on. So, so that's what I would do. I'll get back to you if they
disagree.
They say that that would be coaching, then we'll get back to you on that. But that's what's happened there. All these things don't come out. This is not official until the 25th of January. And they're asking for everybody to get feedback to them as soon as possible, so that they can make sure all the books and everything are done up correctly. So we're talking referees handbooks, alternate rule books, and of course the rule book and the PowerPoint presentations as well.
Yeah, I can see an officiated non-sanctioned tournament, a fun tournament. Yeah, you're gonna try and guide them and help them as much as possible. But yeah, we're bound by the rules. If it's a sanctioned, officiated tournament, we have to play by the rules.
Yep. I think what I'm reading though between this, because of change of server and the way they're wording it, that the referee should make sure that the people are in the right position before the start of that game. So I think there's some room there to make sure that we have the right people starting it. We're not going to catch them out on anything. That's really what I think the bottom line here is.
And the second bottom line is you're going to go back to the chain and check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Without further ado, let's move on. Coaching. Well, that's apropos, isn't it? But that would be the next one. A maximum of 1 minute is allowed to switch ends during a game. Rule 10A5, procedures will be followed to continue play. That's where you call 15 seconds, players ready, call the score, and start the 10-second clock and all that. So at end change, what we're getting at here, it's now a timeout. That's the new rule. And coaching is permitted on the court during an end change. The third-party coaching allowed, yes, then revised rule also treats the play similar to timeouts with respect to the 15-second warnings and so forth, right? So remember when we did a timeout last year, we were to say, we didn't do a timeout, sorry, we did switch ends. And then we would allow them to switch ends and we would say, players ready, we'll resume play and call the score, and away we went. So now this is treated exactly the same as a timeout and dealt with that way. Technical fouls. After the end change has occurred, a technical foul resulting in the loss of a point for the serving team shall now have no impact on the completion of the end change. So let me just put that one on in the parking lot for a minute. No, we won't. We'll leave it. I thought the next one was going to be technical fouls, because what we haven't said right now is that technical fouls this year are handled a bit differently, and that is 1 point is going to be taken away from the offending team, right? So that's a very important change. I like the rationale on this one. The point is taken away, and that puts the onus on that team whose score could have gone from 6-5-2 to 5-5-2, right? And so that puts the onus on the offending team to make sure that that proper server now serves from the correct court. So they would be serving, if that was the first server and they had come in at 5, the non-banded player would have been serving from the right-hand court. He made the 6th point. They agreed to switch ends. And during the switch ends, he said something and the referee gave them a technical foul, which means 1 point is taken away. Then this rule is saying we're not going to go back and start rechanging ends. We're going to continue with the end change and allow it to have happened. However, now the score is 5, so that person is going to be serving from the even court on the right-hand side because they don't have the band. You follow me? Everybody kept up with that one? So the 5-5-2 score. So they have to align properly depending on the score for the server is what I'm saying. And we don't change ends back again. Simple as that. Okay. Players should not call a ball out when looking across the line unless they can clearly see the space between the line and the ball as it hits. The player's depth of field and judgment based on the laws of parallax prevents accurate judgment in these cases. So that's last year's rules. And I wanted to go over that because this is kind of a significant change on line calls. New for this year, they've taken out the whole parallax issue and they simply are saying players should not call balls out unless they can clearly see space between the line and the ball as it hits the ground. The discussion of parallax was removed. And some will think that part of the rule that remains is newly crafted rule, when in fact it has always been the center part of Rule 6D7. It is now highlighted as the key determinant in making line calls, right? Space between the line. This removes the need for discussions surrounding the size of the contact point and estimating where the ball's contact on the court might have been. This rule deserves a more thorough discussion why it is the key to determine in making line calls. Well, let's just keep going here. For some, what follows will be a change of thinking. Players should consider all balls that land on their side of the net as in, unless they can be certain that the ball landed out. So now the key word here becomes certain. How do you know if you're certain or not? 6D, the player, when assigned line calling duties, must strive for accuracy and operate under the principle all questionable calls must be resolved in favor of the opponent. That was what we were talking about at the beginning of the amendment rule changes as a principle of play in pickleball. Now here 6D3 says any ball that cannot be called out will be considered in. Can you tell if a ball is in fact out with certainty? That's because if we aren't certain, doubt exists. If a player is estimating, guessing, approximating, or assuming the ball is out, there is by definition doubt. And if there's doubt, as players, we must rule in favor of the opponents. The opponents get the benefit of doubt on line calls made. That's the key principle. So, anybody have questions on that?
Yes. It took me a second to unmute there. Okay, so it's saying out call shouldn't be made unless it's clearly out and you can see a gap between the line and the ball being out. But the wording is still point of contact, is it not?
No, I don't think it says anywhere at point of contact. I mean, we talked about it, but it's wanting to move away from point of contact being the discussion point is what it's saying.
It just last year, there was some bogus new rules about making the calls for in and out. So now I want to know if that's official or not.
Well, I see your question. So you're asking, is a ball out if in fact it has not touched the line? Or sorry, is the ball in if it in fact has not touched the line?
Right.
Right? So I would agree with you that if the ball does not touch the line, then it is out. So that ball.
So we're into, so this is for non-line called or a medal round that has line judges or has line judges. Now that's been removed from the players. So when there's official line judges, they're looking for point of contact, are they not?
They should be, yes. They're looking.
Okay.
Well, I think the same principle is going to be applied to them, that they must see space between the ball and that. So, you know, that's where I wish I had the, I don't have the drawing with the ball that is only overlapping the line by a quarter.
Yes.
Right? So if you can imagine that 1/4 of the ball is just, if you're looking directly down on that ball, and only 1/4 of the ball overlaps the line,
the
person who's now about to hit that ball is looking down and sees that, they can't see any space between the line.
Right.
However, their partner now, who could be 20 feet away on the other side of the court, is looking across the court and can see space between the line, and therefore calls that ball out.
Okay, I get that.
Right.
So in that exact scenario, if it's a medal round and there's line judges, what's the call?
That, as far as I'm concerned, the ball is out. It has not made contact with the line.
Okay, so we're still calling.
I am.
Point
yes.
of contact.
Okay. I am. Yes. Good. Yeah.
There's a line judge guide that Doug and I were sent by Lynn and Linda Lehman, and it talks about. Therefore, it's important that you understand, this is talking to line judges, it's important that you understand what constitutes an in and an out ball. Number one, a pickleball does not compress like a tennis ball, only a very small area at the bottom of the ball, the midpoint, contacts the ground. Whether the ball physically touches the court, including the line, determines whether it is in or out. If the ball touches the line, the ball is in. A close out ball can overhang the edge of the line. The ball is out because the bottom point of the ball does not touch the court. It is outside the edge of the line. So the rule has not changed as far as line judges go in terms of how they call balls in and out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what they're trying to do, though, that they're trying to get the sense out there, certainly in social play, that if you can't see the ball out, you don't know for sure that it's out, it's to be called in, which has created this controversy for, as Robin is suggesting, when you have line judges, or you don't have line judges, you just have referees, it still should be the same thing, that that ball is good if it is touched the line. If it hasn't touched the line and missed the court, then that ball is out.
Yes, I think what they're trying to do is for players, just to try to get the players to consider that if they're unsure, then they should call it in. But line judges are still, and players should be looking at the point of contact of the ball too. But I think this is just to try to get more fair play for players.
But what's brought this really to a head are the pros, and they are in their pro tournaments, and they are asked for no line judges because of the controversy with line judges and having people on there. So they are calling their own lines, and of course Don Stanley, who's running some of the tournaments there, is quite liking it because there is less issues between player and referees. When we don't have any line judges and the players call it, it's up to them to call it. And they don't have any issues. I happened to be at one of the professional matches in Mesa last year when they had with no line judges, and guess what? There was 2 balls that were hit out that were hit and played which were definitely out, but they played them. And then of course what happened? One of the guys hit the ball when it was out, called it out, and the referee overruled him and called it in. And I was sitting on the line, and I could clearly see the ball out. So there's all those parameters come into it. But still, the good point that Robin made, what does the rule say? Are we still point of contact, or are we changing that view? And no, we're not officially. The ball still has to touch the line to be in or the court to be in.
But you must see that it is in or out. If you can't see that it is out,
you can't call it out.
It's out. So if I'm looking straight down on it, physically it might not be contacting that line, but I can't see that.
Yeah, but I guess, Walter, my argument there, and I don't like to bring this into it, but if it's only overlapping by a quarter, I know by experience that that ball has not made contact with the line.
I can't see that it's out though.
But I know that it's out.
Yeah, I know there's voter fraud too.
Yeah. You would have to bring that up. Right, let's move on.
Can I just make one comment first?
Yeah.
Just that the ball is almost 3 inches in diameter. The line officially is a 2-inch wide line. So if I give it half a ball, the ball's out. If I'm seeing the ball over half the line, or half a ball on the line is what I'm saying, then it'd be out.
Yeah, that was what. Sorry, half the ball where?
If you're looking down upon the ball as a player, or even as a referee down the line, if you can see half a ball on the line, because the ball is greater than the width of the line, it would probably be out.
Yeah, but the problem there, you've just used the word probably.
Probably, yes.
Right? And we don't know for certainty. And if there's any doubt, one half of 1% doubt, you're 99.9% sure that it's in, but there's doubt, you don't know 100%, that ball is in.
Okay.
And that's what they want to get through to everybody. It has to be clearly seen out. So any close balls, don't worry about it. Play the damn ball and don't call it out. And certainly as referees, what I have to say to you, the experience there is that the more experience I gain, the less I want to overrule line calls on the court. So many times I've done medal matches with line judges who have the best view. And they are calling balls which I think are out from the far side, usually opposite from where I'm standing. And they're calling balls in that I think are out. And that has shown me that I really can't overrule a ball because they appear to be out to me. You think you see space, but you do not, because they're putting 2 palms down and calling that ball good. So I would like to caution each and every one of you that this is one of your lowest priority jobs on the court as a referee, is to be making line calls. Your job is to be watching the non-volley zone. You miss nothing in the non-volley zone, and you try to catch as much as you can on the court. But certainly they give kudos to the referees when a ball is volleyed, that the referee is down watching the feet as opposed to watching the flight of the ball. So that's something that you have to train yourself to do. Do not watch the flight of the ball. Watch the non-volley zone and the feet and the play after the ball has been hit. If the ball bounces, then you have every right that you can follow that ball as best you can. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
After the completion of a rally, players may overrule a partner's line call and an officiating team's line call or an opponent's in call to their own disadvantage. So pretty simple. They can overrule the referee, not overrule, but they can make different calls than what the referee and the line judges are saying if it's to their own disadvantage. So you as a referee would just merely accept it. So if you and your line judge have called a ball out and the player says, no, that ball was good, then the other team, the other team would have won that rally. So it's an important issue. Again, that's happened at Nationals a couple of times where that exact same thing happened. And that was to their disadvantage and the referee didn't know what to do. And if that's why it's in the rule now, to make it clear that it's an acceptable call by that player to their disadvantage. All right, point in time changes. I put a little graph together. Mark Pfeiffer passed this on in an email earlier when the rules first came out. And so it just goes through. And if you look at everything in black is in the new 2020 rule book. And if you're looking on the right-hand side, the 2021 before the next serve occurs, that's the sort of the new changes and points in time when that all goes in. The first one, however, is not, and that is not ready signals can be given up until the start of the score being called. All right, so that's still the way it is. Previous line calls may be appealed to the referee up until previously it was after a completed score is called, and now it is before the next serve occurs. Serving team may ask the referee for the score and a correct server up until the next serve occurs, and so forth. You can go all the way down. So it just sort of graphically shows you what the situations are and how it's moved from the previous years or last year to this year. Last one I have, of course, there's quite a few rule changes which are talking and surrounding the disciplinary process. And so this chart is just to go in to discuss some of that and give you an idea of what they're trying to do. And it gives you maybe a better graphic so that you can put it in your mind here. So verbal warnings are a tool for the referee to use for profanity. And the idea is if they're starting to use profanity a bit and you're at the point where you're just about to give a technical, you can now just simply get the player's attention and say, all players are warned. The next use of profanity, and it's going to be a technical warning, this is your verbal warning. So you're allowed to do that once per match and issue a verbal warning in that manner. If they continue, the next time that somebody swears, then you would say technical warning for foul language, and you would write down on the score sheet, technical warning, right opposite the team's name on the score sheet. Aggressive arguing with officials, players, or spectators, you give a technical warning. Ball abuse, disrupting the flow of the game, repeated appeals, challenge the referee's rules and interpretations. Now, if they do that and they are incorrect, then they lose, are given a technical warning, and they also lose one of their timeouts, right? If they have no timeout when that transpired, that automatically then escalates to a technical foul, which would be rather sad. And then the next one is the requested medical timeout is not approved. So the same thing happens. They are issued a technical warning. And if they don't have if they again have a timeout, they lose one of their timeouts. If not, it escalates to a technical foul. Minor actions and unsportsmanlike behavior, questioning, line calls that are continually reversed or receiving illegal coaching, then that all technical warnings are appropriate use there. One thing I pointed out yesterday, and I don't know whether you've caught it, but receiving coaching, illegal coaching. So if during the play somebody comes up and says, you're in the wrong position, the only thing that the referee does is ascertains whether or not that was coaching. And I always have defined coaching as anything that provides direction to a team, as opposed to a comment on good play or nice shot, something like that. But if they have been given direction that helps them, whether psychologically in the game or whatever is an advantage, then that's coaching. You don't have any discretion as the referee. The rule book is clear there. It says a technical warning shall be awarded the offending team. All right. So again, no option. All you do is, was there coaching? Yes, there was coaching. Yes, I must apply a technical warning. You can't go and give them just a verbal warning or say, don't let that happen again. Okay, make that point. Technical fouls. No technical fouls or warnings were previously issued. So all three, 3G2, 13G2, which you'll see under game forfeits on the next one. So all what's in red is from paragraphs 13G2. So aggressively or recklessly throwing the paddle, but not striking anybody, extremely objectionable language or profanity, threats or challenges to any person, challenging a referee's rules, interpretation, and losing with no technical warning, and hitting or throwing a ball not in play, and hitting a person would all constitute or require you to issue a technical foul. Now remember, technical warning is sort of like 1 point. Technical foul is two strikes, if you like. And so as soon as they get 3 strikes, we're now issuing a game forfeit. And the game forfeit is new for this year, right? Before it used to be a match forfeit. You would be, if you had three strikes, you would give up the match. And now with 3 strikes, you're giving up the game that you're actually playing in. So 1 technical warning is assessed and any technical foul listed, that's 3 points. After technical foul is issued, any other technical warning. So you've issued a technical foul because they did something that, in red, and then they did a minor infraction, then we still have to issue a game forfeiture because that's 4 points. Becomes 2 technical fouls, just like having 2 technical fouls. You can't go backwards in discipline is what I'm saying. So after you've issued a technical foul, it may initially have warranted a technical warning, but because you can't issue a technical warning, it has to be another technical foul. 2 technical fouls equals a game forfeiture. Note, the important fact here, that if you're doing a 1 to 15 match or 1 to 21, which we don't see too often, then, and they do any of those, then it's a match forfeiture. Forget about the game. It just automatically is that 1 game. It's the match is over. If a player fails to report to the court at the start of a match before 10 minutes is up, so it's over 10 minutes, they get a game forfeiture. If the player reports after 15 minutes to the match, then it's a match forfeiture. So that's new for this year as well. Normally speaking, however, and you'll notice under match forfeitures in the second line down, if the match, oh no, that's not where it is. Yeah, it is. If a match from 1 to 15 or 1 to 21, 10 minutes after call, the tournament director may permit longer. Okay, so a little bit of discretion there for match forfeitures for being late to the court. It's not really hard and fast, but there's your guideline, and you could issue a technical warning or a technical foul based on the time that they were there or not. But what you're going to do is halfway through, you're going to go to the operations desk or get word to them to recall the names of the people and to tell them that their match is waiting for them on cart, whatever, whoppity whop, and this is your second or third call to that court. So going down match forfeitures further, 2 technical warnings plus any technical foul would be 4 points. That would be the match. 1 technical foul, any of the reds, plus any other technical foul. As we've already said, red, there's a match. Immediate match forfeitures for deliberately aggressive physical contact with an opponent, an official, or a spectator. So deliberately aggressive physical contact. As soon as somebody touches somebody else aggressively, they're gone. Immediate match forfeiture. Aggressively or recklessly striking the ball or throwing paddle, putting individual or property at risk. All right, that could be a immediate match forfeiture. And the tournament director match forfeiture, failure to comply with tournament rules, improper conduct, abuse of hospitality, other rules and regulations or procedures, I should say. But if you're wondering what hospitality is in there, what happened in one situation is one of the players after a match went in and had a fight with the locker in the locker room, in the change room, and did some damage to it. And so they should have been given a match forfeiture for that. Ejection. And so you see new for this year is ejection and expulsion. Flagrant and particular injurious behavior affecting tournaments, the tournament, I should say. Using any ethnic, racial, religious, sexist, or homophobic slurs. Injury through paddle abuse, paddle or ball abuse. Spitting or coughing on a person and not exhibiting best effort. That's an interesting one. So, you know, you get into the gold medal match and you get a couple of players out there and one person is just not putting forward and not playing hardly at all, not paying attention, hardly getting involved, they can be ejected from the tournament for that. Expulsion from the tournament or the venue, that's at the tournament director's discretion based on what has transpired. And the difference between ejection and expulsion is that when you're ejected, when your ejection from the tournament, you don't actually have to leave the premises. If there's an expulsion being issued, then you must leave the premises. Right, so hopefully that sort of gives you the progression of the discipline. It's much broader than it was. We've got things at both ends, verbal warnings, expulsions, ejections, and better definition of and game forfeitures is new as well. So much broader than it was. Any questions on that?
Yes. Is there anything as a standard where you're going from profanity to extremely objectionable language or profanity?
You know, I'm sort of surprised. Good question. I'm sort of surprised that they had a committee looking into that, and I thought that was going to come out in the write-up because that was what they're looking for. They're looking for all the referees to do the same thing for the same reasons. Right. But they're not giving us any there because as they've talked to us, we all have different tolerances. What I think would maybe be worth a technical foul, you might be only a technical warning to you, right?
Right. Pretty regional too. You know, you go to a tournament in the States and they have a lot lower tolerance level for some verbiage is what we do in Canada. So.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm surprised that there isn't more information out on that. I don't know whether to expect that coming or not, but I thought that was the whole idea of putting the committee there, that they were going to be more definitive on that and say, I think one of the important ones that I picked up is aimed at a person, okay? Objectionable language at a person. So somebody might use objectionable language, or what we would think is objectionable language to ourselves, but they're just mumbling it under their breath about themselves. And I'm going, well, that doesn't constitute a technical warning because it says at a person. So
Al?
Yeah.
I read yesterday on the BC Pickleball website, it did define, and it said if it was a profanity that you wouldn't use in front of a child.
Yeah, but Walter probably wrote that, and you know, he's a pretty sensitive guy.
Al, we're expecting a detailed list from you of what are acceptable profanity
Yeah.
and what is not.
Yeah.
I think on that.
I want them color-coded. They need to be color-coded too, right?
Walter's mic is muted still. He hasn't come in, so I don't know whether he's still listening or not. Here he comes.
On that language, it all depends on what part of the country it is. Some people use language continuously in their day-to-day process, which is acceptable, whereas you get some other ones that just one word, that's the bad language, and that's where part of the problem is with this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would be happy to share what my threshold is with you and how I meet it. But I mean, that's only me, you know, and that's got no bearing on how they want it treated right across the board. You know, what I've always felt, if you're doing center court and you've got the cameras and you've got all these people and children and everybody in the stands, and somebody above their, you know, very audible can hear it and they drop the F-bomb right away, that's a technical foul. No question about it. You don't need that in pickleball. Boom, technical foul. If you're down in court 47 and they drop the F-bomb and it's not aimed at anybody, you know, just, you know, quietly, I've heard it as the referee, but maybe nobody else has, you might want to just caution them. That depends on your threshold again.
Would that now not, though, be a technical warning for a first offense?
Well, again, first offense could be a verbal warning.
Yeah, there's actually a definition in the new rules. It's 3A44. It says words, phrases, profanity. Words, phrases, or hand gestures, common or uncommon, which are normally considered inappropriate in polite company or around children. Right. Typically included are four-letter words used as expletives or verbal intensifiers.
Yeah.
So that's that. They have a definition. It's not really a great one, but.
No, it doesn't give you that threshold of what makes it different when we're going, but you know, that's right. What we're saying. That's how I apply it. The one that I will comment on is Don Stanley was doing one of the APP events, and one of the pros used their finger their middle finger to gesture at the opponent, and very not politely. It was not done in jest, and Don right away issued a technical fault. Immediately, and the other player who was walking off to complain and argue about it, Don simply said, "Play ball, 15 seconds." And boy, that whole thing turned around without any pause hardly on the TV at all, and it was excellently done. And afterwards, it was commented on that, and why he was able to do that is he had often wondered what would happen if that came up in a game where somebody did that. So he already knew in his mind how he was going to handle that. And that's where it really does pay to practice those sort of things and know what you're going to do.
Right. Yeah, he was prepared. That was a really good example, actually.
Yeah. So again, I think you can interpret what the threshold is and what they're trying to do. And I think good, Diane, in putting in there the definition as written in polite company, you know, of ears of tender young people out there in the sport. And as I say, I've been at nationals, and you're in the middle of about 6 courts that are down there, and there's 150 people all milling about. And you get somebody on the court that drops it. I mean, you've got to do something about it. You can't allow it to continue.
So,
you want to hear what my 3-year-old granddaughter says when she drops her ice cream cone?
Papa, buy me a new one?
Not quite.
What does she say?
Her mother doesn't even use those words.
So Al, you were saying in your gold medal game that you would be, without even a technical warning, you would go straight to a technical foul?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question about that at all. Yeah, you dropped the F-bomb loudly, clearly for all to hear, you know, at good volume, boom, technical foul. Yeah, I have no...
Take baseball as an example, though. You've got the home plate referee, umpires that stand there and take all kinds of abuse for a long time. Yeah. Purely judgment when somebody crosses that line, and it's pretty hard to define.
Yeah. Everybody
has a different level of, and sort of the conditions. Like if you're center court, as Al says, well, maybe it's different.
Yeah, I don't know how different that should be, but you know, again, yeah, I guess your threshold would change a little bit if I'm down on court 47. There's nobody about. There's 4 players on the court and myself, and somebody drops it quietly. I give them certainly a technical warning for that use of such a bad word. If they just say shit, damn, or any of the other little more common ones, I'm probably going to give them a verbal warning, and then we go up from there.
But at the beginning of the game, when you're introduced to the players and you're explaining who's doing what and wherever, wouldn't the referee say then, by the way, you know, there should be no objective language used. I have no tolerance. Done. That's it.
Yeah.
So the players understand what's expected.
That's funny. Somebody not in the same situation, that sort of thing came up yesterday as a means of handling it. Well, let me tell you that we're getting away from giving long-winded briefings. The briefings are to be pretty curt and short. Normally what happens now is the tournament directors send out instructions beforehand to the players on how the tournament's going to be handled. You can't possibly anticipate all the things that could go wrong in your pre-court briefing, or you'd be there for half an hour. And it's their job to know the rule book. So, you know, whether you've got somebody who's wasting time, I've often done that where I go, oh, damn, I didn't tell this guy that I'm going to be really on top of anybody who's trying to waste time and disturb the flow of the game. So now all you have to do is just turn to them and say, I'm not going to tolerate your time wasting. If you continue, you are going to get a technical. I'm not saying technical warning, technical foul. It depends how it goes. You know,
that's where verbal warnings come into effect. Because if somebody is doing that, you call them all in there, give them one verbal warning, and that's it.
Yeah, Jim, that's one of my other questions that I have to get clear, is that verbal warnings previously were for any number of different things. And right now, all I'm seeing in there is its usage for profanity. There goes Diane. She's going to go to the definitions section there to maybe check it out for verbal warnings.
Yeah, no, you're right. Your verbal warnings are only for profanity, and they're for all of the players on the court.
Yeah, whereas previously, I would have used a verbal warning to warn somebody that their time wasting is not going to be tolerated. So I don't go from 0 to 100 and give them a technical warning. I give him a verbal warning and say, listen, you're wasting time. I'm going to be calling the score. Please pick up your pace.
I don't think there's anything stopping you from doing that still. That's really just game management, right?
Well, I don't know. You know, you have to have the authority to do something. If one of the players appeals, it needs to be clearly written and understood in the rule book. That's your authority to do things. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm saying I need to go back now, because it's been pretty well spelled out from what I'm reading that verbal warning is a tool to be used once in a match, to be issued for all 4 players against profanity.
Yes, that is what it says. Absolutely.
Yeah.